So it's a pleasure to receive you all here. And today I'm going to talk about this theme, the Paul's justification by faith. And in order to talk about this, I try to use some reflections from Christer Stendhal. This is one of the books that Brother Elio suggested for us the last meeting that we had. So it was about 4 or 5 books, and the other persons who wants to present something, we have already this material on internet, so I will send to everybody afterwards. So if you want to see, and then you can present something on your own if you want to. So, but I'm not I will not only reflect on his point of view, but in the text itself also. And we can start talking about the law. And it's interesting because Paul, in his letters, especially Galatians, he understands and he tries to show what he understands as the law, what is the concept. And as we can see, we will see in some of these texts, that the law in itself is not something bad. Okay, the law is not something bad, it's something good because it was brought by God himself. So if he said that it was bad, he contradicts with the Torah itself. So he says that it's good, and but the problem is the law reminds us of our sin. And why this? Because it's because we sin that we need a law, that we need something to show us that we transgress. So that's why the law exists. So it's not something good in itself, but it's something good for us in order to show us our own transgressions. And it's because of our transgression that we need something to prevent us to do this transgression. So he insists very often that the law is occasion of sin. It's not because the law makes us sin, but it's something that shows us, no, we are sinners, and that's why we need the law. So we can start with the text 1. Let us try to read each. We can start from here, maybe the text 1, please.
Why then the law? It was added for transgressions, until the descendant came to whom the promise had been made. It was promulgated by angels at the hand of the mediator. Now there is no mediator when only one party is involved, and God is one. Is the law then opposed to the promises of God? Of course not. For if the law had been given that could bring life, then righteousness would in reality come from the law. But Scripture can find all things under the power of sin, that through faith in Jesus Christ, the promise might be given to those who believe. Before faith came, we were held in custody under the law, confined for the faith that was to be revealed. Consequently, the law was our disciplinarian for Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But now that faith has come, we are no longer under a disciplinarian.
So this text is interesting because of, and I tried to highlight some expression of this text like transgressions, mediator, in order to show that, as I said previously, the law shows us our transgressions, and also he shows that it was promulgated by angels at the hand of a mediator. So the law also, in Paul's point of view, has this link with the mediator. Okay, and that's why he will explain and try to formulate his new theology on Jesus, because he being the Son of God, we don't need this mediator anymore. But we will see this afterwards, how he works on this idea. So it's also interesting to see that the law for him, it's like a disciplinarian. So disciplinarian, I checked in the Greek, it's pedagogos, which in the ancient Greek is not the teacher, but it's the one who will lead the slave who will lead the children to go to the school. So it's not the one who will teach, but the one who will lead you to the teacher. So this is the mind of Paul, how he understands the law. It's not something to teach you, but to show you what not to do and what to do. It's not much more about reflection in this sense that he understands. At least he tries to show in this moment. Maybe the first impression that is something negative, but we will see afterwards that how and why he used this expression to refer to the law. And this is a very important point. Disciplinarian as pedagogos, the one who leads you to the teacher. And it's interesting also to see, and that's the main theme maybe of our discussion today, is to understand a little more about Paul's mission. And we can say that we will maybe repeat something that we saw in the last meeting with Elio, because it was also about Paul's mission, about what is his vocation, if it's about conversion or if it's a call. So we will see this again, maybe very briefly, just to understand a little more about his doctrine on justification by faith. And Paul is very clear in his reading and also in the Acts as the apostle to the Gentiles. Okay, so that's his vocation and his mission. Once we understand this, we can understand better what is he's writing about. Why he's talking about the law like that. Is this some negative or positive? Is it there are some good points in the Christianity that we don't see in the Judaism? So why he explained this? Once that we understand Paul's vocation and mission, we understand better what he meant. So this is his mission to the Gentiles. He's not talking about a comprehensive treatise on the salvation of the humankind. He's not such kind of theologian. His main focus was, I want to bring the Gentiles to this plane of salvation of God. So how to do that? And that's why he's talking about the law. The focus is different. He's not talking about in comprehensive way to understand. So these are some prejudices that we have to be free of. And it's not his intention also to give, as I told you, a comprehensive treatise, but a reflection on particular case of the Gentiles. This is something that we have to bear in mind. And also when he talks about the customs and the rules, we can see this in Galatians and Romans. He is especially concerned about the living according to one's conscience. It's not, you have to read, should we live according to the Torah or not? It's not this question. It's about living according to our conscience. If the pious Jews, live according to the law, if it's according to his conscience, it's okay. Okay, if you are a Jewish Christian who lives according to the law, just because of the others who are Jewish from the same origin of you, maybe they will think differently if you maybe do not respect Shabbat or something. This is not the point, because it's very early time, but maybe you don't follow the rules, so in order that people don't talk about me, I do. So this is not about conscience, and that's the concern of Paul. Let us see the text 2, please.
Read.
Yeah.
Welcome anyone who is weak in faith, but not for disputes or opinions, over opinions. One person believes that one may eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables. The one who eats must not despise the one who abstains, and the one who abstains must not pass judgment on the one who eats. For God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on someone else's servant? Before his own master he stands or falls, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand. For one person considers one day more important than another, while another person considers all days alike. Let everyone be fully persuaded in his own mind. Whoever observes the day observes it for the Lord. Also whoever eats, eats for the Lord, since he gives thanks to God, while whoever abstains, abstains for the Lord, and gives thanks to God.
This reading, maybe I should bring more about the context. He's talking to the Romans. This is a mixed community with Jews who come to accept Jesus and those who come from the Gentile world. So he sees there are some discussions. What's wrong with this community? There are those who are Jews who are from they lived in Rome, but they observed the Jewish law, and now they accept Jesus. So they try to show the others that okay, you can come because you believe in Jesus, but you should do the same as we do, the same Jewish practice. And the others who says, no, Jesus teaches us about freedom, we should be free, and so you should leave your custom, and because this is the new doctrine, is about freedom. So it's not only one victim, both play the same role as victim and as judge. So this is the problem for Paul, and it's interesting because he brings the same idea that we saw in the first text, the mediator. The law is the mediator, and now we don't need it anymore because we have this link with God. The salvation is brought to us by Jesus, and then we don't need the law anymore. But he's talking about the Gentile world, and now he understands that this community still needs some mediator. Even if maybe we are not only talking about the law, we are talking about the other, because you are concerned about what the others do, what the other does. So why should I be concerned about what the other does if our common master is not here? We are talking about somebody who is besides us, who is above us. So that's why we can see in the same text he's saying, who are you to pass judgment on someone else's servant? Here Paul is saying that all of us are servants, but how can a slave tell to the other slave, in this sense, like servant is slave, how can one slave to say the other slave what you should do, since you are in the front of your master? No, the master say to you what to do. So the master in this sense is Jesus, is God, and now we don't need this mediator anymore. So it's another idea that Paul is working on, and especially about conscience. So it's not, in this sense he's not telling you, no, let us all live in according to freedom and not to law anymore. And he's not saying, no, let us make every Christian, every follower of Jesus as Jews. No, he's telling something else. And so another point that very often Paul is misunderstood during the tradition of the church is that, and this is one point that the author says, and I think it's worth to take note, that he says, usually, traditionally, we understand that Paul had ontological view on justification of faith, like something which is for everyone, universal, for the church, and he has some idea of justification of faith which somehow surpasses, overcomes the law. And in order to explain this doctrine, he used the example of Jews and Gentiles. Like, look at this example. That's why the faith is more important. This is the traditional way to understand Paul. But according to our author, he sees that it's quite the opposite. It's not just he has an argument about justification of faith and use the Jews and Gentiles, but the contrary. He has a problem of Jews and Gentiles, how to do with this relationship now, which is new, and then to use an example, not an example, but to like support his idea. He says, no, the Gentiles also are part of our covenant because of the faith. So can we see this shift of focus? It's not, I want to talk about faith and then let us see this example. No, it's different. I want to talk about Gentiles, and the faith is a way to bring them to us. And when he says us, we, always, or at least most of the time, he's talking about Jews, because he's one of them. So this is a shift very important. And when he says about this keeping or not the law, is he talking about this itself? It's not really keeping the law or not. It's about living according to one's conscience. So he's never saying, you should keep or you should not. But it's about keeping, and we will see more about this conscience in the next text, please.
And when Cephas came to Antioch,
sorry, and just because I want to bring the context in order to understand better this passage. Here we see that he's talking about, he's talking to this community of Galatians, and he's complaining of Cephas, Peter. So what's the problem here? That he knew that Peter behaved in a sense which is, now I am among the Gentiles, now I can somehow live with them, like them, because we have a new order, which is with Jesus we are free. But when James, which is responsible for Jerusalem community, comes to Peter, and there is somehow a pressure. No, you should behave like the Jews from Jerusalem. Okay, because there are some discussion. Those who are in Jerusalem think that even if you believe in Jesus, it's okay, but let us keep the rules. So here is complaining about Cephas. Why? Why once you behaved differently, and now because of exterior pressure you behave otherwise? So please.
Because he clearly was wrong. For until some people came from James, he used to eat with the Gentiles. But when they came, he began to draw and separated himself, because he was afraid of the circumcised, and the rest of the Jews also acted hypocritically along with him, with the result that even was carried away by the hypocrisy. But when I saw that they were not on the right road in the line with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas in front of all, if you, though a Jewish, are living like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you compel the Gentiles to live like a Jewish?
So here we can see how Paul was quite arrogant, but also we can see that he is complaining about this behavior of hypocrite. He is clearly telling Sefer that he's hypocrite because of this behavior. Why to behave something differently because of the when he said because he was afraid of the circumcised, which means the Jews, who was really concerned to keep the rules from the Jewish law. So you see the difference. He's not talking about no, we should not keep the law, but let us make people free. And if you know that you are free because the freedom of which Jesus brought to us, and if you behave like this, so please keep behaving as your conscience says, and not because of other people says. So here we are in a context of people who are trying to make the Gentiles to be circumcised also, and among other things, to bring those to the Jewish, not only the same covenant, but the same customs, which is something that he wants to discuss about. So one thing that I want us to bear in mind is this: he's not talking about Christianity against Judaism, or the message of the gospel against the statement of the law. Okay, but the question is the relation between two communities and their coexistence in the plane of God. So it's much. That's why I said he's not talk. We should maybe not overestimate what Paul says. He's much more concerned about a local problem than what the church says about salvation, plan of salvation. He's much more, no, what can we do to the Gentile? And that's why we see now how he understands about his own vocation and the others, because we also see the record of his vocation in Acts, which is not his own writing. So let us see the text 4, and in this text we see that Paul is and this is also something that Brother Elio said in the last meeting, and then we will pass very quickly, but just to understand that he understands himself as Jeremiah understood himself. So let us see this call, this mission, as to bring, as to have something to do with the nations. Okay, that's why he compared himself to Jeremiah. Please, text 4.
Before I formed you in the womb I knew you, and before you were born I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations.
And then you can read also the text from.
When God, who from my mother's womb had set me apart and called me through His grace, that I might proclaim Him to the Gentiles.
So we can see here, especially in these words that I stressed, he understands his vocation as something which comes before his birth, as we can see also in Jeremiah, and this common vocation to bring the word to the nations or to the Gentiles. And this is not something like, I want to compare myself with somebody from the Bible because it gives me authority. It's not only like this. It's about also how can we understand his mission? Because traditionally when we read Paul, we see, and many of the books concern, also this Bible, which I use, and I think it's a very good Bible, the New American Bible, which is, I think it's a very good translation. It says about the conversion of Paul. So it's something that is in our tradition, and that's why I brought this theme of comparing to the Jeremiah's vocation, because when we see what he was called for, then we see that it's not something about only vocation. It's much more about something else that we will see now. It's about call, okay? And how is it just a shift of word because nowadays we cannot talk about conversion anymore? No, and this is also something that he explained in his book, that usually in the history of the church, when we saw, and not only on the church, but maybe in the Bible also, when we see a report on conversion of somebody, we see something which is very radical, like I used to live like this and now I am different, I live like that. So this is much more about personal life, okay, a change, internal change. And what happened to Paul is much more external. It's not about what he believed and now what he believes. No, it's much more about mission. Okay, I had one mission and now I have something else. So it's call, and that's why he compares himself to Jeremiah. And so please, text 6. Yeah.
Now Saul, still breathing murderous threats against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters of the synagogues in Damascus, that if he should find any man or woman who belonged to the way, he might bring them back to Jerusalem in chains. On his journey, as he was nearing Damascus, a light from the sky suddenly flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? He said, Who are you, sir? The reply came, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. There was a disciple in Damascus named Ananias. The Lord said to him, Get up and go to the street called Straight, and ask at the house of Judas for a man from Tarsus named Saul. But Ananias replied, Lord, I have heard from many sources about this man, what evil things he has done to your holy ones in Jerusalem. But the Lord said to him, Go, for this man is a chosen instrument of mine, to carry my name before the Gentiles.
So it's interesting because, as I told you before, here in this same passage begins with this title, Saul's conversion. And if we understand and we analyze these words which I stressed inside this passage, we only see something about mission, not something about internal change, like I used to believe. And usually, especially, I don't know, but in Brazil, when we see evangelical people saying about conversion, it's very hard, like I was like a server of devil and now I am sent. You have to have a very ugly past. Okay, it's not something like okay, I had a new reflection. No, I used to have drugs. Okay, I always had a very
I have been Catholic now.
Yeah, it's even worse.
Yes, it's the bad thing to be Catholic.
Yeah.
So when I convert,
it's idolatry, no? So yeah, it's interesting because this is something which we see always in the history. No, I had to have something which is very different from my current situation. So, and here no, we are talking only. Now I have something else. I was called to be somebody. Like, what is his mission before? To persecute those who follow the way. The way here is those who follow Jesus. That's the name they used before. And now, so you can see these words. Let us see the words that I highlighted. Against the disciple of the Lord. So this was the first mission, to treat these people and then bring them back to Jerusalem. So Jesus said to him, "Why are you persecuting me?" So even Jesus says, what about this, your mission, your calling, let us see like this. And now I give you something else, okay? I give you something else to bring the word. Also, it's important because I only put some parts, as you can see. I didn't put all the text because it's big, but when Paul had this experience, which I think is much better and fortunate to use this word experience, so of a new call, so there was this man Ananias who was asked to go to Jerusalem and say to him and to bring him the sight again, because of his experience. So what was the answer of this prophet, I think? And he said, "But he has done look what he has done to the holy ones." So you see, not only Jesus but also Ananias remember him of what he has done, like the calling, like it's all about mission, okay? From one mission to persecute, and now your mission is to carry my name before Gentiles. So that's why we should rethink about our concepts. So there is also something which is quite interesting, the way Paul tries to explain. Always that we read Paul, we can feel that he tries to show his own people, the Jewish people, that no, I want to explain you why the Gentiles deserve to be part of our same plane of salvation, of our covenant. So actually it's not only about if he accepts or not the Torah. And that's why you see in the next text that Paul, as a good Jew, he used the Torah to explain why he understands that the Torah is not something eternal. Okay? So he's not saying, like Eli used to say, in the Jewish people, they are much more used with different opinions than us. So it's interesting, and I saw this also in this text, that Paul just showed, you have an idea, traditional idea, and now I show you my idea. And I will show with the Torah. I will not show with something else. I will show it in the Torah because I will explain before to understand better this text. He's complaining of those who think that the Torah came before creation. And this we can see also Midrashim, which says something like that. So it's one point of view, it's okay. But he shows that no, I have another point of view, that the Torah is not before creation. The Torah came as an intermediary, as we saw, Pedagogos, okay, the one who brings, not the one who teaches, not the one which is the end in itself, but there is an intermediary role in the Torah. So let us see this text. And I will read this one because I want to stress some points which I think it's important. He is talking to the Galatians, okay? "O stupid Galatians, who has bewitched you, before whose eyes Jesus Christ was publicly portrayed as crucified? I want to learn only this from you. Did you receive the Spirit from works of the law, or from faith in what you heard? Are you so stupid? After beginning with the Spirit, are you now ending with the flesh? Did you experience so many things in vain? If indeed it was in vain, does then the one who supplies the Spirit to you and works mighty deeds among you do so from works of the law or from faith in what you heard? Thus Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Realize then that it's those who have faith who are children of Abraham. A scripture which saw in advance that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, foretold the good news to Abraham, saying, "Through you shall all the nations be blessed." Consequently, those who have faith are blessed along with Abraham, who had faith. For all who depend on works of the law are under a curse. For it's written, "Cursed be everyone who does not persevere in doing all the things written in the book of the law." And that no one is justified before God by the law is clear. For the one who is righteous by faith will live. But the law does not depend on faith. Rather, the one who does these things will live by them. Christ's ransomed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it's written, "Cursed be everyone who hangs on a tree," that the blessing of Abraham might be extended to the Gentiles through Christ Jesus, so that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. Brothers, in human terms I say that no one can annul or amend even a human will once ratified. Now the promises were made to Abraham and to his descendants. It does not say, "and to descendants," as referring to many, but as referring to one, "and to your descendant, who is Christ." This is what I mean. The law, which came 430 years afterwards, does not annul a covenant previously ratified by God, so as to cancel the promise. For if the inheritance comes from the law, it's no longer from a promise, but God bestowed it on Abraham through a promise. So I know it's quite big passage, but it's important to see that Paul is using this tool, which is very often used in Jewish milieu. So why? Because he used all these words, which is how do they say? Aspen? Quotes, in quotes marks. So it's always from the scriptures. So he is explaining why he understands that the Torah also has this role of intermediary, and not only, but especially how to bring these Gentiles to us. So once that we have faith, and he used the example of Abraham, and he says that the law, maybe this is my own opinion, I don't know, but maybe what he understands as law here is not something like what God said since the beginning, like to Adam or to Eve, but is the rules. Okay, it's like with L minuscule, something like that. Like not because it's not important, but because it's about rules that we have to follow. Okay, and why I say that? Because when he says, "For all who depend on works of the law are under a curse." So when he says law, he says about something that you have to do. You have to. It doesn't depend on your conscience if you like or not. Because, and why is it a curse? Because it's written, "Cursed be everyone who does not persevere." So this is the point. No one can live completely the law. Okay, everyone is a sinner, since from biblical times. So if anyone cannot do it, if you follow the law and only the law, it means that you are cursed, because you will not follow completely. No one is able to do it. So law in this sense, and only in this sense, means a curse, not because it's bad, but because we need something else, okay? So I understand that Paul is not saying, no, leave law to the past, we don't need it anymore. But I understand that law is good, but you need something else. Law is not good in itself, okay? It brings us to something else. And this is faith, as Abraham, okay? If Abraham lived before the law, which means, well, it's not the law, that thing, okay? We need something which is, so for him, faith is that thing that is permanent, and that's the point. He, as a Jew, is part of this covenant because he's a Jew, because of the law. But you, Gentiles, are also part of this covenant because of Abraham, because of the faith of Abraham. Because Abraham also is, we understand now, I suppose, I hope I am clear in this sense to see that how he struggled to bring Gentiles to the same covenant. That's the point, and only this point. Okay? And he explained this very clearly. The blessing so that the blessing of Abraham might be extended to the Gentiles. This for me is very clear. It shows what is his point. This is his purpose. It's not about, now salvation is for Gentiles, not for Jews anymore. No. I want to bring, actually, it's not exclusion but inclusion of somebody else. And in order to understand this, it's also important to see his language. What he means when he says we or you. When we understand that in this text, number 8, we will see also, this is a very good example to see how he always tried to bring these two elements, we and you. And what is this you? So, can we continue? Number 8.
Before faith came, we were held in custody under law, confined for the faith that was to be revealed. Constantly, the law was our disciplinarian for Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But now the faith has come, we are no longer under a disciplinarian. For through faith you are all children of God in Jesus Christ. For all you who were baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ.
So this passage is actually the same that we used before, I think the first one. It's one part of this, but this one I put again, just to stress this time. When he said we, okay, we are saying we as Jews, okay, we were held for the custody under law, because the law was our disciplinarian, okay, and so that we might be justified by faith in Christ. So even the law had some, the law is like arrow? No, the law is like an arrow, okay, to show you a direction to Christ in his point of view. So that's why it's a disciplinarian. And so that through faith you are, so when he said you, he's talking about the Gentiles. You are all children of God in Christ Jesus. I put this passage only to show how this is important for him, and I would suggest that this is the main purpose of Paul, to bring the Gentiles to the promise of God to Israel in a broader sense. But we have another point which is not completely solved. So now we have the faith. We don't have the law. Not necessarily. I always think to try to understand that Paul is not saying never that law is not important, but law is not a must. Okay, not a must. Okay, it's not a must anymore, especially for those who are not Jews. Okay, so why I say a must? Because if you are a Jewish Christian and you want to keep the law, it's okay. It's okay. But it's not a must. Maybe he himself did not observe, as he said about Peter, about Cephas, you behave like Gentiles now. Why you have to change now? So if you behave like Gentile, but you know that you are saved by faith, in a sense, so it's okay, but it's not a must, and you should not ask for other people to observe the law as a must, but as something which is possible, at least. I'm talking about Gentiles specifically. So, and the problem that I said is, okay, now we have Jesus, we have faith, but does it mean that we have accomplished everything? I don't think so. So, how can he answer this question? Okay, before we didn't have this testimony, this witnessing of Jesus, but now we have, and does it make us better in a moral sense? So this last text, it's very important because he shows that no, it's not everything right. Okay, just because we have faith, it doesn't mean that we are better than others, that we have accomplished everything. And he used these keywords, which is faith, hope, and love, which traditionally we call them theological virtues, but it's important because he said, now we have faith. Why? Through whom? Jesus. Now we have hope. Through whom? The same Jesus and the Spirit, because he brings us a message which is not accomplished. But one day we will have the love, which is the accomplishment of everything. So let us see this in the text number 9. Yes.
I consider that the sufferings of the present time are as nothing compared with the glory to be revealed for us. For creation awaits with eager expectation the revelation of the children of God. For creation was made subject to futility, not of its own accord, but because of the one who subjected, in hope that creation itself would be set free from slavery to corruption and share the glorious freedom of the children of God. We know that all creation is growing in labor pains, even until now. And not only that, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, we also groan within ourselves as we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now hope that sees for itself is not hope, for who hopes for what one sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait with endurance.
So let us check these words which I stressed to see this dichotomy of now and not yet. Okay, what we have accomplished already and what we need already to do, what we still need to do. So this present time, he's talking about now. We have something, but not like the glory to be revealed. So, not yet. Eager expectation. So, this is another word to express the not yet. Okay? After we see, but we ourselves who have the first fruit of, okay? Who have, in the present tense. So, he's talking about now. We have the first fruit of the Spirit, and which is also hope and faith, okay? But we are waiting for, not yet, okay? So I hope that it's clear for you what I meant, and especially I think maybe Paul has a very deep theology, and maybe the tradition of the church has not always recognized and maybe chose to interpret in a different way for many reasons that we understand. And just to finish, I suggest only this question so that we can reflect on our own when we go home and maybe to have some crisis. It's okay. Just this question. Does then the one who supplies the Spirit to you and works mighty deeds among you do so from works of the law or from faith in what you heard? Do we, 21st century Christians, live according to the works of the law or to the faith we have received? Can we see maybe in the reality of the church some works of the law also? So, just for reflection. Thank you.